All right, friends, today's conversation is around base theory. And I'm bringing you this information because I feel as though once you can really grasp the depths of the substructure of human design, there's just this calmness, centeredness, a deeper acceptance, a deeper way to really see how the life is leading you. So on the screen here, you see that there is this image because we are, as Raul would say, we are crystals of consciousness. And over the course of the last couple months, I've done some really deep study into some ancient philosophers. And they all talk about crystals of consciousness. And these crystals of consciousness allow us to then become the filter for the information field. What is the information field? Well, it's the neutrinos that are coming from the luminaries that are within the firmament. And they're providing us with information that can be like at the daily transit, our cycles that we are in, whether that be the Saturn return, the Chiron, the Uranus. These are all information fields that you and I get to filter through our crystals, design and personality crystals. And we lean into that and can recognize how magical the life actually becomes. So I'm sharing this with you today because as I go deeper into this, I recognize that how deeply this is just already happening in my life. So I want you to see it and see it in your life as well. And can this material be used for clients, used in their businesses? Yeah, it totally can. And when I interact with people, like I ask them for their designs. I want to see their designs because I want to see is their personality crystal motivated correctly? Is it speaking to me through the correctness of their own motivation? How do they operate in their lives? Are they trying to force their passive body to be active? Are they, communicating to me through their activations in their design? Or are they trying to convince me through the openness? So again, I see the holistic of design, and that's what I am hoping for you. So base theory is all about orientation and position. So we are all here in this, time-space continuum, whatever you want to call it. And we take up this space. And yet, as we take up this space, if you look at your body, you're thinking, well, I am taking up some space. And yet, if we were to go, millions of microscopic movements into your body, there's more space than there is matter. So it's interesting. We take up space, and yet we are space. This is the duality. So as filters, just think about a strainer, for example, in your kitchen. The water can flow through a strainer. And yet there's these little tiny little bits of water, excuse me, that can sit on the mesh of that strainer. That's the information field. That is something that is there residing so that you can absorb what it is that field wants to inform you of. And the orientation and the position, we are all designed to be in particular places at particular times. That's why design like hones in on such a deep aspect of personality and design, because it's like this triangulation. It's a triangulation. And as we walk through here, understand that that's what the quantum field wants. It wants a triangulation. The triangle is the most powerful aspect inside the Merkaba and sacred geometry. The triangle allows for this triangulation of materials to be funneled into a space. So I'm going to walk you through this. I have listened to Ra's base theory and his history of geometry a few times. And it wasn't until my cellular structure was clean that I could really hear it and understand it. So you might not understand this the first time you go through it, but know that it is here for you. And the more you work with clients, you're going to be able to see how this stuff leans in and is already working. So the neutrino ocean hits the base, and through the base, it is then filtered up through the tone, to the color, to the line, and then to the gate. And how we can assist this trajectory of information to be correct for us is to be correct on the surface. And that means strategy and authority. That means leaning deeper into trusting what is defined in us and allowing for the wisdom of what isn't defined in us to just be that information and wisdom. So we call this base theory. Well, he calls it base theory because can it be scientifically proven? I don't know. I don't know this. And doing the deep investigation into the philosophers that Ra also investigated, you can see how 5 base theory and this 5 different orientation or positioners, this is something that is spoken about in every culture, every spiritual facet in the world. 5 is humanity. So can it be proven? I'm not sure, but I do know that every indication of this is leading us to the correctness of what it is, because of not only Ra seeing it, but also so many other philosophers being able to grasp this. So let's move into base theory. So Ra says what the voice told him is that we're actually in the ajna center. We're in the ajna center of whatever existence is. Whatever existence is, we are residing in the ajna center. So isn't that interesting how currently we're in this mental conceptualization of existence. It's a mental conceptualization. So we are the new filters, and this is the sacred element of the totality. This is what the crystal is telling us. Base is the consciousness crystal. The base of the consciousness crystal, it releases a frequency to provide the proper form for the design, and then the self-reflected consciousness for the personality. So the design crystal maintains its intelligence, which is the form, so that it gives the passenger that opportunity to have self-reflected consciousness. That's why the primary health system is so critical, because once the passenger, or once the vehicle, the form, has its intelligence, is not interfered with, is provided the correct nutrition, then the intelligence of that body is not something that has to be quote unquote worked on. Now the self-reflected consciousness can be there because the mind isn't so concerned about the body. It's actually watching itself live through the body. So the personality crystal is consistent in all of our incarnations. The design crystal or the design base is going to shift. So when I walk you through where to see this in the charts, your personality base is yours for every incarnation that you come in. That's what was given to Ra as information. The base, however, because your body changes. Your body changes. But your personality crystal stays the same. You always go back to the same personality crystal bundle they are in the firmament above us. So that personality crystal goes back and lives with its personality crystal bundle. The design crystal and the monopole remarry and drop back into the crust of Earth. And then once the incarnation is about to happen again, and however human beings have been called in, is through that sperm penetrating the egg and that fertilization. Now the personality crystal knows that it is going to be called into a physical body. So the body begins to be created, and then the personality crystal is shifted to sit with that body at the moment of birth. Okay. So let's just take a look at these. First, I want to show you where to find this information in your chart. So if you don't have the Maya mechanics and you use the genetic matrix, let me just get my drawing tool. So what you're going to look for is the last digit in this series of numbers. So this is my chart. So my bases are 5s and 1s, 4s and 1s. So what this tells you is that this is the 29th gate, first line, second color, 6th tone, 5th base. So grab your chart, and what you're going to do is we're going to look at the base of the personality crystal, and I'm going to show you how the nodes also become into play, because again, this is position and orientation. So we are oriented to a particular base, but we're also positioned to communicate with those along our fractal line, which is our movement and trajectory. Also, I'll just show you, if you do have Maya mechanics, which that's where I get all of my information from. I like to use Maya mechanics because this is how I grew up, right here. So 5, as you noticed, genetic matrix says the exact same, right? However, this shows the box. So when on the next slide, you'll understand this. Okay, now I'm going to tell you something that is going to may blow your mind. I don't know. Maybe you've heard of this, but there's what we call link nodes. So in the design, What's important is that you take the base, you actually take the entire north node of the design, and you take it and you put it over with the personality. And you take the south node and you put that over here with the design. So personality, south node, actually is designed to reside on the design side. The design north node is actually designed to sit with the personality. And what these are called is link nodes. They link up your physicality of your body and the personality of your mind. So when we are looking at the base theory as we walk through here, so you want to write down on the personality side, for me it would be 5, and then it would be 1, because I'm also, both of my nodes are 1s. However, let's take a look at somebody like Ra. So Ra actually has the 4th base, but his nodes are 5s and a 3. So just write this down for yourself, okay? So whatever your base for your Sun Earth, and then the node, both north nodes, you want to write that down under personality. On the design side, you want to do the exact same thing, because when we walk through this material, you'll be able to go, oh, and see it in a different way. All right, are you guys tracking with me? Are you here with me? Hopefully there's a yes. Okay. So now I just want to show you. I'm going to provide you with an image first and foremost. So this is what I'm talking about around the box. Rob was provided this information. It was actually after the voice spoke to him. He worked on all of these aspects and wrote the poems and leaned into it. So this wasn't something that was provided, bit by bit by bit through his 8 days. There was pieces that he still had to work on, which he did from 1987, 88, 89. I don't think he really, he was teaching a little bit, but he actually didn't, really lean really deep into having students and stuff until 92. So there was this, he had like 3 or 4 different students around the world. But what he was told is that, here's the image. And actually we make this a quarter of a turn, which probably doesn't matter to you. But when you're looking at it through the Maya mechanics, you're going to notice that once we turn this, that the 4th base is actually down here. 1 is here, 3 is here, and 2 is over here, because there's a quarter of a turn. But this is how he was provided the view of it at the beginning. So if we look at these boxes, what they are is actually a pyramid. Here are the 4 bases, and this is the tip of the pyramid. And why this is going to become important is I'm going to show you how to look at how depending on your orientation, so maybe you have 2, 4, and 1. The 1 does not directly communicate with the 2 on the personality side. However, it can go through the design and then over to the 2. So it can go 1, 4, 2, 2, 4, 1. That's how it's processed in your being. That's how humanity also has the capacity to speak. But the 4 on the personality never directly communicates with the 3. The 2 never directly communicates with the 1. And what you're going to notice, okay, is that when you get to the 5 is what really is the pinnacle of it all, holding it together. And this is on the personality side. And then on the design side, it's the 3. And we're going to walk through all of this. So, for example, I have in my personality, I have the 5 and I have the 1. So through communication, what I'm doing is I'm speaking about individuality and movement, which we're going to get into. And I'm speaking about thinking and presence and personality and holding space. That's how my base operates. So I can communicate with all of the bases because of this 5. However, the 1s and the 5s just naturally come to me because there's a deeper communication there. Okay, so depending on your design, so maybe you have a 4 and a 2. Well, when you're talking about self, which we're going to get into, understanding what self is, it's really difficult to talk to the being unless you speak through the mind, and then they might be able to hear you along there. So let's lean into this so it makes a little bit more sense. Okay. And I'm just going to break down each base so that you can understand it. And then we're going to continue to move it into your awareness. So the first base is all about movement. But what else do we know? It's also about reactive and perspective on the design side. So we are really looking at the personality because that's what we know, that's what we recognize, that's what we're incarnated in. And then when you look at the body aspect, you're going to see that the physical body also holds this information and filters this information. And then the personality ends up bringing that communication through. So for the 1 and first base, we're focusing on our personality, but we're also looking at it through a little bit through the lens of design. So movement. What is movement? This realigns the movement to our uniqueness. That's what strategy and authority really does on the surface level. It's very similar to the throat, where the action taken is directly correlated to the actions taken by strategy and authority. So this is a deep theme in the nodes because the nodes is a line of movement. So when you are looking at the first base, and if somebody has this in their sun earth, what you really want to examine for that person is look at their nodes. Why? Because perspective is in the nodes. Perspective is in the nodes. So what you want to do, okay, again, look at the sun earth. Find out what the base is. If it is a 1, you really want to get them and help them understand how their perspective works in their personality nodes. Because that is what aligns this particular human being. So you want to move them through tone, color, line, and gait expression. This is react. So I define the I, right? I define the I only emerges in the body graph when we individuate from the totality. Uniqueness must be defined. So for me, this is like, this is the base. This is like the pillar of what human design is really trying to give us. Is that we are all individual. We are all unique. And once we are unique, then we can actually recognize our own individual movement, because our perspective is not through the chaos of the conditioning, but the action taken through strategy and authority. So if you have someone with personality base 1, really lean them into understanding their perspective. Now, they might not have the first base in their design side. Okay, I want you to understand that. However, it's important for them to understand their nodes. Now, the natural orientation to the genetics. So once there is this I am, naturally we could go, okay, here's our genetics. And understand what friction means. Friction, there's always this, I'm not sure what scientists are doing in labs at all, but like the natural way that species and things are created, there's a friction. So the sperm and the egg, there's a friction to get into and penetrate that egg. There's a friction. Sex is friction. And then what happens is all of a sudden there's this chemical reaction which creates heat, so that all of a sudden our genetics are unique to us. And then through that uniqueness, we have this movement. If we had no friction, if we had no individuality, that would be cloning. All of a sudden there's a sameness, and sameness is cloning. So then there is no individuality in that. And then when we look at the natural communication for movement through that 3, which is the genetics, now we're looking at the 4. This is the ego and the self. This is the I design. So this is needed in the building of existence. Genetics is not the only individuating aspect. Your unique will, because that's where what the ego is also what directly affects individuality. We create the Maya. We make it up every single day. So when we talk about, when we begin to talk about manifestation, that's what we're doing in the 4th base. We're making it up every day. So the root is all built, earth and civilization is all built through the heart. The heart is special because it is a directional medium that we call earth, right? Here we have our movement. And the directional medium is the heart. So the heart and the genetics, so our willpower, our willingness, that is actually what creates our individuality. And what we need to understand is that the first base has no direct effect on our mind. So when we individuate, there is no direct. So individuation is not because of the mind. Individuation is because of our willingness and our genetics. Okay? So when you're speaking with someone and you're looking at their, you're looking at this through the lens of, say, a business. So what you want to do is you want to have them lean into movement. So what does that mean? Movement doesn't particularly mean the activity of the body. The movement is being aware of the friction and the experience with nature, the experience with the willingness. So if we're pushing through our will and we become sick, that movement wasn't correct for us. So they can help people really look at understanding the actions that they're taking. What are the actions that they're taking? The movement, the react, the individuation. So for example, there's a human design coach on Facebook, and I think it's absolutely hilarious. So she sold a schwack of templates. And, I don't know, made hundreds of thousands of dollars on these templates for human design readers to use on Instagram. So now all of a sudden, you have thousands of human design readers, the exact same template on Instagram. Oh, that's not individuation. So having people recognize that they are designed to be individual. So this could be as simple as an individual meal plan based off of their genetics, an individual business plan based off of their willingness and their designs. Because that's all about action. So it's aligned action based off of what they're seeing. What are they actually seeing? What is the perspective that they have of their day-to-day reality? Okay, so that is one of the business aspects that can happen here. Now, I'm giving you this information and I want you to meditate on it because meditation allows you to go deeper. So even if you were to grab a pyramid, put it in your hand, put it on your chest, and imagine these 5 bases. Maybe you put 2 of them on your chest. Maybe you put 2 of them in your hands. You imagine these 5 bases in each one of these pyramids or crystals that you're holding. And you meditate on it. There's going to be so much more information that comes through you based off of that than me providing you this information, just an FYI. So now if we look at the 2, there's a lot of information here for the 2 because really that is, the mind is something that is a fascinating aspect. So this is actually, the mind is what we call evolution in the personality side, or spirit and integrative on the design side. Oh, well, isn't that interesting? So the mind, and we know this, can actually directly affect humanity's genetics. We know this. If we wake up, oh, I'm sick, I'm sick, I'm sick, I'm sick, I'm sick. Bang, the genetics of the body will create an illness. If we wake up and we are willful, we want to interact with civilization, and we are on point with that willingness, that shifts our life as well. So the role of mind is actually to remember. The role of mind is actually to remember. So when you wake up in the morning, you remember, okay, I have this body. Oh, this is my home. This is where I live. This is my job. This is my career. Oh, this is my dog. And what's really fascinating is that the minute that we lose our mind, we lose our orientation and our position. So humanity's evolution, integrating the mind with the physical body, integrating that energy field with the physical body, allows us to remember. So when we don't remember, you know, I haven't had this experience directly in my family, but I know many families that have, where their Alzheimer's, grandma, grandpa, mom, dad, ends up walking away from the home or the seniors center that they're housed in, or whatever it is, and they no longer have orientation or position, and they get lost because there's no mind. There's no more integrative body and mind aspect. So personality seeks to triangulate. It wants to triangulate. It wants to have an orientation, and it wants to have a position. And what meets in the evolution is humanity and civilization. I shouldn't say evolution, I should say civilization. This is a formula of evolution. So how civilization and humanity operate actually shows us our evolution. And right now our evolution is like disastrous. And it's so interesting because I'm listening to philosophers from the 1800s and the early 1900s. And it's so crazy because guess what? They're saying the same thing. They feel like humanity and civilization is going backwards and the evolution is not happening. It's so interesting to see how that is recognized by each generation. So it's only when humanity and civilization come together for the victory of the process. The mind doesn't have a direct connection to individuality. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to, how do I want to say this? The conditioned mind is trying to get us to sameness and conformity, and that same exact mind can never individuate us. It takes the movement of individuality. That's why strategy and authority and action creates the manifestation of the life. And the evolution of the mind to come together in the middle where we have to actually think. And this is my role, think. So I'm going to teach you that fifth base. So we actually have to use our thinking in order to individuate. So this is where in the evolution and in the spirit integration, this is like how we remember. These are the archetypes, how our roles evolve over time. And we've seen this. We've seen how our roles evolve over time. It's so interesting to, at one point, women had to produce so many children because you never knew how many of them would survive. And because you didn't know how many of them would survive, you continue to reproduce because originally business was family. So you had a farm, or you had the corner store, or you had a mechanic shop, or whatever it is. Everything was family. So the woman produced so many children because you just didn't know who was going to survive. And the survivors needed to be there to run the business. And in my father's generation, like his family, there was 12 of them, 12 or 15. Geez, now those two numbers, I don't know. And by the time he was born, his oldest sister she'd moved out and she was already having children. This is the same with my husband's father. So they were, my dad and my husband's dad, they were uncles to children that were actually older than them. And now, we don't see that happening, especially in Western society. I know that it still happens in some places in the world where the tribes are still using the children and populating children because they're still working in the fields. But the evolution of the archetypes have shifted. So the mind itself doesn't actually connect with individuality and movement. So that's why we cannot trust the mind to make our decisions for our movement. Because the mind is always trying to remember. It's trying to always go backwards. Where our individuation and our movement is actually creating this uniqueness so that we can move into our purpose. And homogenization is the conditioned mind. We find out mind through being and through our designs, through our willingness to live the design. If we are not unique in that first base, we can't remember our role. Isn't that interesting? So the moment that we lean into homogenization, and that's really what, like, for example, the Chinese Communist Party, the CCP, that's what they do. They want everybody to be these foot soldiers and total conformity, because they'll never, ever, ever be unique that way. They'll never remember that they have a unique soul. It is only those that are brave enough to step out of the conformity that recognize, I am individual. A homogenized mind is actually meant to be here, but we have a way to escape it. Okay? So evolution is like the glue. It's like this mind that pulls all the things together and remembers it. So there's also a taste and a judgment over here. Okay? So taste is judgmental and discerning. Orientation is to choose based on its memory. That's what it does. That's what this orientation does. What it holds and uses as a discernment, it might not be correct. And we know this as coaches. As a coach, that's where, unfortunately, a lot of trauma lies, because we remember the same thing over and over and over and over. It glues. It's a glue. And then all of a sudden we create a discernment around that. The subconscious mind holds on, and it's difficult for us to move forward into our uniqueness because of the trauma or what we remember. So the collective mind wants to have an end and a completion. It seeks the beginning and wants to figure out the end. So we see how our mind does that, right? Mind is memory. And once we lose our memory, we lose our life. Exactly what I just said around the Alzheimer's. The memory is our glue. It holds us. So memory can be concretized and stored as well, which is very interesting. The 1333 is a very great example of how we can take human experience, human history, and integrate that into books. Show the spirit of humanity in books. And going forward, the rave, which is going to be a quad right expression in the variables, they're going to be a memory source that we can't even imagine. So this is how right now D-Wave quantum computers is trying to have all these qubits of information. Elon Musk is trying to implant things into our brains so that he can take all the data. I see that Bill Gates just did some kind of patent to have electrodes or like chips and stuff put underneath people's skin, because the skin is the conduit for all the data to be transformed around the world. And of course, this is all, they're mechanically trying to create this because this is where humanity's going. But the human physical body, whatever that is going to be called, in the future, if that's going to be called a rave or what it's going to be called, actually holds all the intelligence. And they're trying to take that and manipulate it. They're trying to manipulate evolution. They are trying to get us to remember things by integrating a different spirit into us. And what you're going to notice is that the penta naturally wants to use all 5 of these bases when it comes together. Mind doesn't hold on to the uniqueness of mind. Mind becomes the evolution of storage. So our uniqueness is what Earth needs from us to fulfill your possibility now. The body influences the mind and the ego is connected to the mind. The program is not your life, yet you are it. Okay. So when I talk about the transits aren't your life. They are a data information field. That's it. And you are also providing data and information out into the world. So the program isn't your life, but yet you are in it and you are it because you're programming as well. So understand that if someone has the second base in their personality, these can be magical mindset coaches or trauma coaches, helping people go back and remember and shift the spirit of that experience so they can integrate it differently. So, for example, I grew up in a household of alcoholics. My mom and dad were both alcoholics. Everybody that we that we knew as children, they all drank. They were all drinking all the time. Seemed like all the time. I don't know. They held jobs. Everybody worked. And there was a lot of violence and fear and just never knowing, would my mother be alive the next morning? Because my father would physically abuse her. So there was so much fear there. However, as I integrated the spirit of a different remembering of that, as I moved through my life, what happened is that I've recognized how deeply that upbringing allowed me to connect with my intuition. It allowed me to read a room of human beings so well. I can read energy like crazy because we had to be very, very on point as children to read the room, to know exactly who we could connect with, who we could talk to, who we couldn't. If the adults there's lots of tension, if they were all laughing, we knew exactly those transition points. So I learned so deeply my intuition as a child growing up in that. So we can always look at our remembering and integrate that into our spirit differently. Again, second base of the design. So you want to be looking at both of these keynotes and blending them into how you can help your customers going forward and yourself. Third base. Third base is all about the genetics, the being, and the trajectory. So this is about the form principle. This is about the physical body. Nature of being and the position of being. Genetics, that's your DNA and it's your RNA, and it's the deep biological structure. And know that the deep biological structure is a 5, okay? We see 5 bases, but it actually is shown as a 4. So when you talk to biologists, and I learned PHS and rave psychology through a biologist, the fourth, like the 4 bases, the 4 building blocks of material are something that's really deeply recognized in biology. Even though it is a 5 base structure, it only shows 4. So if we were to look at this box where we see these here, we recognize the corners. We recognize the corners. We recognize mind and ego and body and individuality. Like, we recognize that. We don't always recognize the thinking. We recognize spirit and manifestation and perspective and timing, but we don't always recognize trajectory. Genetics moves towards the mind and evolution, as you see here, because it wants to have a story. Genetics wants to have a story. Like, that's why we have genealogy. It wants to have a story. So I can take your DNA and I can tell you what's your story? I can tell you that. I can tell you how you evolved, how you came about. And through that genetics, I can also show you how unique you are. Not me, I guess, a scientist. So we can look at this as rave psychology and the genetics that moves towards individuality and the uniqueness in the PHS. So I see these people as deeply scientific. I see them as scientific as in, understanding hormones and glands and how to keep the genetics, the physicality of the body healthy and well. What is the objective of that physical wellness of the body? So how to establish the mind and individuality is actually through the genetics. The very vehicle itself brings the unique form, which can then have the unique self-reflected consciousness. So being is matter. The mind, the evolution, can change the form, can change the matter if we let it. The body is the life, and this is the equipment and the limitation of the body. So the dysfunction in the matter affects the life. So, for example, if a child is back in the day when there was polio. So I I have a coach and a mentor, and he had polio as a child. And that dysfunction, he can't run. He can get around, he can walk, but it's difficult. He had to go through major surgeries. And it actually affected his life, because who knows? Who knows what could have been? But this was the trajectory. This was his trajectory to get the polio. So then what he did is, instead of using his physical body, which was natural, where he grew up, that was just the natural progression, was to use the body in the physical labor, sports, all of those kind of things. He had to shift and start using his mind. He had to find his uniqueness, because there was a body limitation. So he had to stand out above the crowd and find his uniqueness. So there's an objective sometimes to the limitations of our physical bodies. So maybe you, like me, I'm short. I wasn't going to become an NHL hockey player or an NBA basketball player or an NFL or CFL football player. It's just not, it wasn't in the genetic code. So there was a limitation, but it put me on my own trajectory. So objectivity is the source of life. Genetics is the life. Matter just is. There is nothing else, as we are designed to be matter. The presence of matter is the life. Matter interacting with matter is the genes interacting to create humanity and individuality. So the objective is all about matter and the survival of the matter. Survival permits evolution and the movement. So sex is actually not for pleasure, but of course for survival. We know this, even though humans are the only ones that use it for pleasure. And it's a big seller. It's a huge seller, because there's indulgence in sexual activity. So the totality is an objective being. It is matter. Maintains the humility of what is. Diversity is here versus cloning. This corner is what will no longer be available to humanity as we move into the rave. So Ra always says that there's not going to be the I am as the conscious penta emerges, because it's not going to be the I am. It's going to be we am. 5 people coming together. This is his look at where humanity is going. I'm not sure. So if we take a look at this as in like the business aspect of it. So it's really interesting. I have coached doctors and pharmacists and nurses and health coaches, and as well interacted with biologists and naturopaths. And it's interesting to see how many of them have the third base in their personality. Because once you have that base, there is just this natural movement. There's a natural movement to orient and position yourself to that knowledge. So again, just watch it with your clientele. See what you find out. And the more you lean into your base orientation, you will totally notice how you were on point the whole time. All the learnings that you've had was always leading you there. And the people that come into your life are ones that you resonate with. So doctors and pharmacists, that's the energy that they're bringing. Health coaches, that's who's around you. It's a base orientation. And again, we need all 5 of these in order for humanity to feel stable, have a base. 4, this is design, this is ego, this is manifestation, and this is progress. So I understand this from a design aspect, okay? Manifestation. I get that. One of the things that I love is looking at the lens of manifestation, understanding manifestation, helping my clients lean into manifestation. And now I recognize it's because it's on the design side of my body graph. So it is just natural for me to help them manifest. So ego, self, I design. So the establishment of ego, it is only out of the bedrock of ego that self can actually emerge. We are here to be driven by the ego and the mind that creates the civilization. What's my role? Am I willing to actually step into that role? Sorry, my throat is getting a little dry here as I'm having this conversation with you. So civilization is built on ego. So when we take a look and we're like, oh, those guys are so arrogant, they're so egotistical, they're just driven by materialism. Yeah. This is a part of the personality. This is manifestation is a part of the design side. Why? We are here to take our, you're gonna understand this more when I get into the 5th base. We are here to take our thinking and create and filter through all 4 of these bases. So if you have a particular base, lean into it. Lean into it. Okay? Lean into it. So if ego and design is a part of your base, lean into being willful, understanding it. And then you're like, oh, but Leann, I have an undefined ego at the top and on the surface. Yes. However, what do we know? That ego is directly affected by movement. Strategy and authority will tell you what to be willful about, how to manifest, how to create manifestations through your willingness and your will power. So the heart center is the master of life. It is the master of the body graph. It's the smallest center, but it actually is the master of this whole thing. It takes materialism and spirituality and it runs it through the heart. So the immune system, the heart, the gall, it's all there in that center. It's the driving force. That's what ego does. The ego circuit is not interested in the self. Self is just a direction. Okay? Self is a direction. Understand this. When you look at the heart center, you have 3 tribal, 1 individuality. Okay? 1 individual channel, the 51 going to the 25. What is that? It's actually a direction, because that's what the G center and the monopole do for us. It's a direction. It's like physics. It's like relativity. No 2 items can hold the same space. So you're there alone. The ego is about dominating the material plane. It is competitive. Clashes, of civilization happen because it's always like, oh, my God's better than your God. Oh, my person's better than your person. My mom's better than your mom. Blah, blah, blah. It's always this competition. So without the ego, there's no expression of uniqueness. Isn't that interesting? We need ego, even though Eckhart Tolle tells you that you can't have ego. Well, have you listened to him? There's no animation there. He's not animated. We need animation. We need to express our uniqueness through our willingness to participate with this reality. So there's no design without ego. The bond between ego and self is that 25-51, like I just said, or 51-25. This is how the subtlety of the I in ego gets wrapped up in identity, and that becomes the game of the mind. Do you see that? Do you see how that keynoting just happened? Right? We think, oh, just because it's our direction, this big I gets sucked into the mind. The not self is the wrong direction. The true self, your true movement, that's magic. So your movement in space is what is important to the design. So where you are is who you are. Where you are is who you are. Where you are is about what you are about. So we know this, directionality, we know this. Again, I'm playing into the body graph aspect here of the ego, but also the identity center. So design makes us smart missiles. That's what human design does for us. Why? It's a guiding system. So you are a guidance system of this design. The tonal architecture of the design crystal, known as cognition, that's how we manifest, okay? So if you want to know all about that, I have the aligned manifestation protocol, the AMP process, that is going to be just a self-study. And I'm going to teach you all about that, because that's exactly what this is all about. So the tonal architecture of your design crystal is the cognition. This is your guidance system. This is how you put your, the quote unquote mind on a trajectory to manifest. And then you watch your movement, how you participate. Authority and strategy is the alignment of movement. It's your guidance system at work. So every decision you make is an alignment to your movement. When you think of the self, stop thinking of I and start thinking of where, because the self is a direction. It is not, it's a direction. And the direction is helping you manifest. The true self is in the right place. Then it gives the mind the ability to see. The not self does not have a guidance system. The not self has no guidance system. It is fully distracted. So the ego doesn't have a direct effect on the genetics, and yet wants to be progressive manifestation of form. So there's pressure on the genetics, but not directly. And the pressure on the form, this is usually us manifesting material outside of us. So this form structure is in progress. The form is always in progress, okay? So your physical body starts out, right? And it moves, and it progresses, and it progresses. And then it seems to progress to this space of, death. The structure is built and then broken down. Sounds a lot like the third line. Now we're going to continue on this because there's so much material here. So if we take a look at this, the undefined and open egos are always under pressure to show their progress, right? And to prove that they can compete. We all have the genetic limitations, and it is the basic homogenization that we all have. We get stuck in trying to improve the limitation, trying to be faster, smarter, better, right? So what we want to understand is that progress actually is smelt. Smell. Smell is the bedrock of intelligence. So this smell is sourced from the 27 of the nutrition to the extraordinary 50th gate. The 50th gate is the cauldron, okay? Now, from the 50th gate, it goes up to the 44th. So that's why we extrapolate the nose in the 44th. There's smell over there in the splenic center. So most of most animals moving around smell prior to seeing, hearing, tasting, touching. They smell something. Like, I have a Great Pyrenees, and he can smell for 5 miles. He can pick up a scent. This is the source intelligent. It's rooted in smell. Progress is the emergence of that intelligence. It's the intelligence of life. So life is what ego brings. It's the structure of intelligence. This is the orientation. And manifestation is art. It's artful. The mind needs a role, right? So profile is the establishment of the role of the mind, okay? We need to remember and learn that role, and that role always evolves, mother, father, etc. The ego needs to have a self, needs to have a terrain. It needs to be given a direction, right? An alignment to that uniqueness. And that can only be found in the design. Just like the genetics need a body, and as a uniqueness needs an individuality, right? We need individuality to be unique. We need a body to have genetics. We need a mind to have a role to remember. And we need an ego to actually have a self. And you can't get uniqueness through the mind. Understand that. There's no direct connection there. So the ego and the body will get their movie together eventually, the ego and the body, but it's a slow process. It's progressive, and it's perspective. So the homogenization of the body and the ego can happen just as well as uniqueness happens through the body and the ego. So if you come in on this base, there's no road to the I am. So if you are on the 4th base, there is no road directly to the genetics, to the I am. Whoops. You have to get to the I am through the evolution of your mind and your trajectory. So what are you doing over here? If you have the 4th base on the personality side, or the 4th base on the design side, well, it has so much to do with willingness and manifestation, and teaching people the progressiveness of manifestation. So we want to believe that it can be instantaneous. At this point in our evolution, I'm going to make a big claim here. I don't think it's quite possible yet. I can see how the right variable, where it's right on the cusp of it, and then once we get to the quad right, it'll be so easy. It'll be right there. And again, in my AMP self-study course, Aligned Manifestation Protocol, I'm going to teach so much about this, because of all the material and my own experience, and watching my husband's own experience of this as well. Okay, now let's get to the fifth space. The fifth space, this is all about, I think, and it is subjective timing. I think, therefore I am. Isn't there something like that that says that? I think, therefore I am. This space is the synthesizing force. It is the projection show. So the glyph itself, if you look here, this is something that Ra actually had on hats, on blankets, on pillows. He had it on clothes. He had this glyph on everything because it was the synthesizing force, and it's a part of his trajectory. So it's actually the penta. I showed you guys that when I looked at the business and the penta aspect in the genetic matrix. You can see that. Because in the Maya mechanics, there's a little bit of shift how they give you the visualization of the penta, but this is the penta, it's the 5. And we see the 2 legs, the 2 arms, and the head. And actually this glyph, or this visualization, is man. It's the 5-pointed star of man, of human. And again, in every philosophy that I have studied since bumping into human design and leaning down into that philosophical pathway, 5 is always the stabilizing force for humanity. However, when we look at it through the lens of penta, 5 is always telling us that now we are on this transitionary period. Now we're going to move into transition, which shows us in the 6th hexagram, which is all about transition. But if you notice, there's only 5 bases. There's 6 tones, 6 colors, 6 lines. Hold on. Sorry about that. My phone rang. So this 5th base is all about synthesizing, and this glyph is human. It's 5. It's the penta. It is what emerges out of everything, and that's where we're moving to. And this 5th base is the initiating frequency that we know as orientation, okay? And it's like this space holder, but space holders are actually designed for this self-reflected consciousness, this I think. So I think makes it all up, okay, from the 4 bases. So it takes in all of this information and it holds space for it, and then it creates this I think. So when moving correctly along your fractal, we will bind to the others in the aligned illusion. That's what the 5th base does. So I am here, therefore I think Descartes or something said that, or I am aware that I am here. It is a place. It is space. So it is the space between the notes. I say that a lot. That actually carries the melody. It's the space between your fingers, the space between your toes, your legs. It's the space between you and me. This is the illusion. We make it all up every day, all day long, okay? The mind wants to remember. The 5th base wants to think and make it all up, okay? And it is all about timing. So life is not actually in the corners. It is all inanimate. It is moving through the illusion that is everything. That's the magic, okay? That's the magic. So we make it up every day. The body and the form is the tool of the illusion. The illusion is hearing. This is all about acoustics. All about acoustics. So the illusion is built with forms. And acoustics is frequency-based. It's frequency-based. Geometric forms, not matter, but form. Okay, the illusion is built on form. So when we talk about sacred geometry, it's built on form. Frequency creates the construct. Go onto YouTube and just like sound on a drum, right? Depending on the drum, you beat on it, you put sound on it, you beat on it, it creates a geometric shape. Water, depending on the acoustics that we put onto water. So if we say the words, I love you, water becomes this beautiful geometric space. If we say the words, I hate you, it like gets all distorted and breaks up. And so the frequency, so the I think is the interpretation of frequency. The brain interprets frequency and changes it into data. And it delivers with the cognition of the self-reflected consciousness. That is why cognition is so important. That's why you guys understand PHS. Subjective brings the I am here to be heard. The illusion is relative and subjective. Subjective. It's all about timing. And it's so much about timing. So let's look at the, more information on this. We're orchestrating life and harmonizing life. Music is homogenizing. Space and music is the existence. So music can homogenize this. What does this mean? So you can remember a song back from your childhood, depending on when you grew up. And you can, recognize that when that music is there, oh, geez, you can go back in your memory because we have that capacity. When we're sitting here in the I think, we can communicate with all of these. It brings it all together. You can go back in your memory. You can see exactly what did your body look like. You can look back at the mind and go, oh, you're remembering that. You can see yourself, that individual example of the body. Were you being homogenized? Were you not being homogenized? How are you showing up in that music? So say it's maybe you were at a dance, or you remember that music from, say, a sports team. And what were you doing? How was your ego showing up there? All of that brings together this illusion. Like national anthems are homogenizing agents. Freedom of the illusion and our individuated frequency. And it is subjective for all of us. Again, why is it subjective? Well, because we each have a perspective. We each have our own unique trajectory, movement. So the illusion combines the four sides. And these elements are to be expressed in the illusion. It is our ability to think is according to the relativity in space. Freedom is to be the illusion, but not subject to its authority. That right there. Freedom is to be in freedom, is to be in the illusion, but not subject to its authority. The illusion is what you watch and enjoy. It is entertainment. And the illusion is timing. When correct, the illusion falls into place. The strategy and authority are the key components to timing and your own illusion. So, again, I'm going to talk about this a lot in the AMP course. It is the space inside of our cellular structure. And this is something I have said so many times to my clients and so many times on YouTube. We don't create space in our cells. There's no room for us to think. There's no room for us to manifest. There's no room for us to be individual. There's no room for the correct genetic code to operate. And there's no room for us to willingly move into our own perspective, integrate our spirit, and allow for the correct time. When we're not holding space, we get very impatient. So, fifth bases. Man, there's a lot that can happen with a fifth base. And I know this is my experience. I am a fifth base with a 1. That's my natural movement, 5 to the 1. So it's all about individuality and holding space. And I'm a master at that because I have no other choice. And then once I bring that up to the surface, totally undefined head, ajna, and G center just allows the freedom, is in the illusion, and not be subject to its authority. Period. You be your own authority. And there will be this space for you to think, individuate, be willful, remember, and trust the genetics of your body. Okay. So I just want to show you this other image because it may assist you as well in seeing this and leaning deeper into it. So again, these are all raws. I didn't create any of this. This is all material that was provided through his teachings. And these are all his little rhymes or poetry that he created through studying and looking at the body graph and understanding the 5 bases. And again, he was a part of the Mensa group. Okay. And this is something that is so intensely important, is that what Rod did was created a structure. His 4323 had no other choice but to create a structure of all the philosophies that he had deeply, deeply studied. So when the voice came to him, some people say he was on an LSD trip. I don't know. I don't know if he's ever said that. I've never heard him say that. Could be possible. I have no idea. He really enjoyed that stuff, so it might be. What took place is all the information that he had, all that space that he had along his nodal trajectory. He was able to create design because he is the 4th base. He was able to create design, and he has a defined ego. So if you want to, take a screenshot of this and just take a look at movement is energy. Energy is creation. Creation is seeing. Seeing is the landscape. Landscape is the environment. How do we know that? 1 and 1. Movement is energy. Energy is creation. Creation is seeing. Seeing is the landscape. Landscape is the environment. It's our perspective. We know that along the nodal configuration. We know that. We can see activity. We can take reaction, meaning that we react. There's a limitation because we can't do it all. There's a limitation. Then we can see it. And this provides us with our uniqueness. This provides us with our uniqueness because we are trusting our strategy and authority and that movement. Now, if we take a look at evolution, again, I'm just going to go through these quick. So 2, evolution is glue. So he wrote gravity, but what he indicated when he taught this, he's like, look at gravity, not in the sense of how science, has this illusionary gravity that's holding us on Earth, because that's a delusional aspect. Glue. Evolution is glue. It's this glue that creates the memory. Memory is taste. Taste is love, and love is light. So what we look here is we understand that we then have a character. Okay. So how to integrate your spirit is that we have a character. So we have a role. Then we recognize that we are separate. And then we recognize that this is our nature. In the design, it's your nature. It's just what takes place. And if you notice the two here in the space, this is something that we lean into as well when we take this right up to the surface level, up to the line value, and we see the hermit, and the hermit is natural. Integration, this is to recognize that we are a role and a spirit in that role. We integrate that because it's just naturally happening in us. And it's integrative in the sense that we will be called out as a two. There's this natural calling out to integrate and create memories. And that's what creates a glue for us. And then the three. Oops. Being is matter. Matter is. Matter is. There's nothing else here. Matter is. It's just a thing. It is just an existence of humanity. Matter is. Matter is touch. Touch is sex. Sex is survival. So when we look here, the objectivity, our trajectory, there's a biology, right? We're given these genetics. It's a chemistry. It is objective. There is a geometry here. And it's a trajectory. You're given genetics and it is a trajectory. The genetics are not tampered with. You get the life that you are deserving of, need to have. And if the genetics are tampered with, for example, you get an illness, something happens, you can look at that as well as saying, this is a trajectory because matter is. So you can look at it both ways. Fourth base. Design is structure. That's what Ra did. He structured the philosophical teachings of so many teachers into a structure, and which provided us progress. And the progress is smelt. Smelling is life. Life is art. Manifestation is art. So we came in as these Homo sapiens. This is our design. We grow, we decay. There's continuity. We're passing this off apparently to a rave. I don't know. This is what Ra thinks. Other philosophers think differently. And that's really what manifestation is. It's the ego designing. The ego designing, manifesting. Arting. It's arting. That's what the ego does. It arts. And then the space holders. Space is form. Form is actually an illusion. Illusion is hearing. Hearing is music. Music is freedom. Because it's all about acoustics. Subjective timing. Type. Fantasy. Subjective. It's a rhythm. It's timing. This is the flow state right here. This is flow. So what I absolutely love, okay, Ra interpreted all these philosophers in his way. Stephen Coulter, who talks about flow, interpreted it his way. Richard Rudd took all the exact same philosophers, because I see it in his material after learning from these philosophers, and he produced a structure in his way. So now you get to take this material and see and help people lean deeper in. So they have, say, for example, the 3. It's all about body and genetics. Okay. Now, I'm not saying that everybody that has the 3 has to be a doctor, a pharmacist, a naturopath, a nurse. I'm not saying that. But what you'll begin to recognize is that there's a thread in their lives. So maybe they have had a quote unquote health scare. And that health scare moved them into learning about minerals, vitamins, supplements, collagen, amino acids, hormones, glands, understanding that the glands are the feedback system, blood and blood analysis. It could go on and on and on and on and on. And now all of a sudden, they become a health coach based off of what happened in their lives. But that was their trajectory. So use this material, understand that I'm going to say, like, let's just say probably 91% of the people that are talking about human design have never even seen this material, can't grasp it, don't understand it. And guess what? I was there. I listened to this probably in the first year of my learnings with human design. I downloaded every piece of material I could from Raw, but I could only absorb a portion of it because the space in my cells was not cleaned out to hold it. My illusion was filled with delusion, so I couldn't hold it. So this material that I just taught you may not make any sense to you right now until the cells clean out and you can see it. Okay? It might not. It might not make any sense to you. So the other thing that I can show you here is this, is that we all have these different personality bases and different design bases. So all that is important is for you to just see it. You know, this is kind of similar to mine. I have the 5 and the 1. But there's ways that, you know, like for example here, this particular or this particular base orientation, what you'll notice is that they're going to bring a lot of people into their lives because they need that communication to happen through the other 2 bases. Someone like this, they don't have a very big fractal line because it's just along here. I don't have a very big fractal line because I go from the middle to one side. There's some that have 3. Will be here, here, and here. That's a huge fractal line that they're speaking to. A lot of people. You know, or maybe it's here, here, and here. So your fractal line is going to be whatever it is. Again, this is mine. So I have a small fractal line. I have the 5 and the 1, or the 4 and the 1. Others have larger fractal lines. All right. Hopefully this brought you some insight into your base, as well as you're going to like move through this material and help your clients with it as well. So meditate on this stuff. Like Ra always said that to his students, and listening to his classes that he taught, it was never, you know, this is what it is. And believe me, he worked with naturopaths and biologists. Like, he had the structure of this material, but they shifted it. They moved it. They meditated on it as a group, and saw that there was faulty structures, and they redid them. So look at it through your perspective and your lens and see what you get. All right. Thanks, friends.